And I think a lot of religions actually have a much more integrative approach where kind of God is in everything, and everything deserves your empathy, be it a worm or even just a vegetable. And I think that we see that our brain is actually to some extent kind of predisposed to have that. And then some of the other issues I explore, I think, in this chapter on sensations and pain, which I think are really interesting, is some of the gender differences. So you have the cliche, for instance, that men are empathic and that men are not empathic and women are. But some very nice experiments on pain, I think, really refined that cliche and revealed something interesting. So in one of these studies that Tanya Zinger did, what she did is she had men and women enter the lab. And the first thing that would happen is that they do a little game with two other people. One of these other people is really going to be unfair to them and keeps all the money. The other one is going to be really nice and will always share the money with them. And then what happens in the second part is you put them in the scanner and you show them either the fair or the unfair person get electroshocks. And what you see is that in women, it doesn't matter whether they see the fair or the unfair one get the electroshock. They'll activate their own pain in both cases. When men did that, they activated their own pain when they saw their friends get the electroshocks. But if they saw the unfair one get electroshocks, they actually activated pleasure areas instead of pain areas. And what's interesting about that is that it shows that when it comes to your friends, male and female are actually equally empathic. It's not a difference in capacity for empathy. But what really seems to happen is that the way that relationships, fairness, and those kind of things modulates how much you empathize, men start to become very different. And now if you think about why, for instance, we send our men to war and not our females to war, it becomes very interesting to realize that if you tell a man, for instance, that this enemy is a really terrible person, very unfair and different from you, men will actually not feel so much empathy anymore. And if they then have to hurt the other person, they're not going to suffer that much from feeling the pain. If you send a woman in the same situation, she will still feel a lot of empathy towards the enemy. And hurting the enemy will become something that's psychologically very hard to deal with. So I think that some of these differences that have good reasons in evolution maybe to come about really shape the way that we have to deal with psychological distress, for instance, in war for male and female. And they also help us understand a bit why dictators, before they tried to set up a genocide, really tried to make people believe that this other group is very, very different and is very, very kind of unfair. Kind of, if you listen to what kind of Hitler did about the Jews, basically, it was all about that, showing that they're very different and showing that they're kind of very mean and unfair. And by doing that, he was leveraging the kind of mechanisms we all seem to have in our brain to reduce empathy when we are men, at least, towards people that are unfair. And once you've downregulated that with propaganda, it becomes a lot easier to actually motivate the people to hurt others. And the positive message is that the other way around, if you emphasize the similarities we all have, with other human beings, you might be able to increase people's empathy for others and really create this culture of empathy that we're all about, where you now start to really care about what happens to others because their pain becomes your pain and because their joy becomes your joy.
Yeah, well, that's what the beauty of the mirror neurons is for me, is that it shows biologically how this works so that we can actually study and find ways of increasing empathy and understanding what diminishes it and create interventions, to support creating more empathy within society.
Absolutely. So by understanding that our brain empathizes less with people we think are different or have been unfair to us, I don't think that we should take that to mean, okay, well, then it's okay to be less empathic to other people. But what it does do is it shows us where the lever is. And it basically gives us a manual of how we can increase empathy or reduce it. And I think that in the kind of economic crisis we are in right now, it really reveals two routes that politicians can go. I mean, the easy route is to say, kind of, if you're the British Prime Minister, just to speak that say that the Eurozone countries are in a deep problem and they should deal with it. Or you can say, kind of, we are all in an economical crisis and we all need to deal with it. And by making this difference, you're either kind of washing your hands from the problem, or you're creating, I think, really the spirit of community that will be key to us working shoulder to shoulder to really solve the problem. And I think that's what we can do as scientists, is show the politicians where the more meaningful solution would be. But then, of course, it's their choice to do it or not to some extent.
Yeah. Well, we've gone for about an hour, and we've gotten to about chapter 8. And I don't want to keep you longer because I know you've got schedules and all that. So, so we could maybe wrap it up here. And so we went to chapter 8, and I think there's 11 chapters. So, and the book is online, so it can be downloaded for very nominal cost as well. And I think it's a wonderful book. I read it the second time just before this interview. So
that's very kind of you.
Yeah, I got a lot out of it because I really love the the physical mechanistic part of it, how it works. And I know a lot of women that I talk to, like I have the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. It's probably 70% women who are kind of, signing up on our Facebook page. But I did talk to one of them who said, I started talking to my boyfriend about mirror neurons. The men think, oh, this is all woo-woo stuff. I started talking to him about mirror neurons, and suddenly he was interested. It all made sense to him. So it's like, the men, maybe, generalization here, but they like, how things really work, and then it makes it more real. So I think this really does that contributes into that.
Well, it's great.